Hello again, it's me, your teacher, Jen Shaw. We're looking at week 3, designing the documents for your audience, or a document for your audience. This is going to be a brief introduction to design principles. We're going to talk about contrast, alignment, repetition, and proximity, and how to apply these basic design principles to your documents, because they're there. But wait, you say, I'm a student, not a designer. That's not true. You are a designer. Every time you write a paper, you pick a font. You pick a font size, you pick the alignment of the text on the page, you select where you're going to group your information, like your name, what the class is, etc., etc. These are all really important design choices that you didn't even realize you were making. And what do these decisions do? Well, for one, they increase your readability, and for another, they improve your message's impact. The most important thing is that your audience can read your document, that it is as readable and it makes as much sense visually to the audience as it possibly can. I'm going to give you some tips, but that'll come later. First, we're going to go through a little history of document design. Very brief, very brief. Let's go back, several hundred years. How about 500 years? Well, people had been writing stuff, and you could even say that the ancient Egyptians adhered to some sort of design principles. It's not like their hieroglyphics were all different sizes or they weren't in line with each other. They used a uniform, standard arrangement of letters just like anyone else did. And even back when people didn't have printing presses, when it was scribes, they had rules about how to design the page to make it as readable and as enjoyable for the audience as possible. So back in the scriptoriums, you had these monks that would sit there and specifically every little line copy with complete perfection from another book. So that's kind of like a typeface. If you're being so specific about making it exactly the same, that's a typeface. Then when they started adding designs and stuff, the illustrators, then you're adding some really beautiful visual design to it and improving the rhetoric of the page, possibly complementing the text. Sometimes it might not have had anything to do with the text, but still, it was something that was entertaining to readers at the time, so it increased the audience. Back then, books were expensive, only owned by kings or priests, and nobody really had them. And there was a basic form of printing back then. It was a wooden printing press, and it worked very much like a stamp would now, like the kind of stamps that your aunts make holiday cards with. You had a wooden cutout, you had an ink pad, stamp, print, basic. It would take a lot of time, and it wasn't very effective. Then, in the 15th century, a handsome young man named Johann Gutenberg, who was tired of the woodblocks of the old printing press, came up with something new, a mechanical printing press, and he came up with the first movable type. This meant that books were for everyone. This revolutionized the world. This made it to where anyone could access. Mostly it was the Bible at first, but still, even back then, the priests had the key to the Bible. The priests were the only way you could access God's Word. So that gave them power over you. Making books available to everyone, making text available to everyone via the printing press brought about mass communication, brought about a revolution in the world. Very, very, very important discovery. So let's talk about the principles of design. Johann didn't have but one font in his printing press, but still he used principles of design when it came to printing his stuff. Everyone uses principles of design. I have this beautiful little infographic here that can break it down for you. We've got the 4 major elements of design. You've got contrast, you've got repetition, you've got alignment, and proximity. And let's talk about these in a little more detail. Contrast is using elements to stand apart from each other. That could be shapes, that could be color, that could be the size of things, the direction of things. There's different ways to create contrast in your design. For example, here we have the principles of design. The color of this, that's a different color, you know. Principles, this dark color on a white background. Of is very small, so you realize that it's not as important as these other 2 words. Design has a heavier weight to it, so it's kind of balances out the image. So they use contrast in this pretty effectively. Although you don't really think about it, it's there. Repetition. Well, these little sections, boom, 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 boom. You've got repetition in the You've got repetition in the size of the font, in the color of the font. That's smart. It draws your eye. It makes all these things seem pretty much equal to each other. Proximity It refers to where the white space is, or how close to other things of a similar nature they are. For example, if you're going to be writing a paper, at the top of the paper you're going to put your name, you're going to put the class, you're going to put the title of the project, and you're going to put that all in one little spot right around up here. You're not going to put your name up here, the class down here, the title of the paper over here. You're going to put it in proximity to each other because it's all important information that your teacher's going to need as soon as they look at your paper to identify, hey, this is Jen Shaw's paper. She's turning it in. Oh, it's that specific project. Excellent. Alignment, we deal with this all the time. Now this is a center align. I would guess you would say this is a left align, but then we have a different direction for the font here. There's a right align to these. You'll notice that the line of R, E, E, and N here all meet the same vertical line, just like that does. Now this helps the readability of the paper, of the infographic itself. You notice these boxes are all lined up. It's very smart, very clever. This is a very good infographic. And feel free to refer to it as much as possible. Let's go back to the principles of design and talk about them a little bit more. Contrast. Now I'm getting all this out of my book, Design for the Non-Designers Design Book, the Non-Designers Design Book for Designing. Anyway, the credits at the end of the film strip, PowerPoint, whatever I'm trying to say. Contrast. The idea behind contrast is avoiding elements on the page that are merely similar. Now that would be, for example, if these fonts were not so different. I'm not sure what this is. This is, let's see, we can check. This is a 36-point font. This is a 20-point font. Now, if this were more of a, let's say, 24-point font, there's not a lot of contrast between these two. You don't really notice that this is more of a heading and that this is more of a subtext. So what I did here was I increased the contrast here, made it bigger so that you would notice, hey, that's different from the rest of it. So we got contrast. Alignment. You'll notice all my stuff lines up. One great thing about using PowerPoint, boy, it gives you the alignment lines. It helps you out. Let's say I want to move my text. Oh, look at that little red line that just appeared. It's telling me that that's lining up with the C at the top. Now it's telling me, oh, you're not lined up with anything. Oh, goodness, you should probably move it back. Oh, there it appears again. So alignment. Repetition, repeating the visual elements. We've got big font, big font, big font, big font. We got a box, a box, a box, a box. We're not trying to throw things arbitrarily all over the page. Proximity, these items related to each other are grouped together. Hey, we've got these 4 design things right here. Well, what if I had thrown a couple extra spaces there? Maybe I decided I wanted proximity to exist in a completely different place. That's not going to make sense. Why is those 3 together and this one isn't with them? Makes no sense. So we should stick it back where it needs to go, right there. Make sure our alignment is still on. Perfect. On to the next slide. This one's fun. Font selection. Now when making a document, there aren't that many design decisions that give you much creative freedom. And I would say most academic papers, you're not going to get the creative freedom that you want. You're probably going to go with a standard font, Times New Roman, or something like that. But font is really fun. Now, typeface is a modern problem because, like we said back then, people would write this one way, and then when the printing press was made, there was pretty much only one kind of font, and that was the font on the printing press. There's some things that go on when you're selecting your typeface, though. There are some 3C issues that you could deal with. Concordant, that is when your font is in harmony with itself. Right here, we've got this. It's all in caps. This right here, that goes together. Now, this does not go with that. That is conflicting. Well, no, that's not conflicting. Conflicting would be using Calibri with New Times Roman, or Times New Roman. It's kind of similar, but it's still different. It's kind of jarring. So what we've got here is, okay, we've got a Bodini. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to say, let's go to Bakerville Oldface. That's similar, but it's not exactly the same. Now I'll come over here to, but not exact, and let's say, let's see, let's get something that's, there we go, Arial Narrow. It's similar, but it just doesn't match up, so those conflict with each other. There's not enough difference for it to make sense. So what we want to do is just, let's put all this back where it needs to go. Oh my goodness, I lost my font. Wait, there we go. We'll do that. Contrasting. Now this is fun. This is when you get complementary fonts. They can be very different, but they complement each other in the differences. They actually make sense together because they're so different. So this is just something to keep in mind when you're selecting typeface. Again, let's try to line this up. Where's my alignment? Oh goodness. All right. Anyway, moving on. You don't need to watch me edit that. Categories of type. Now there's 5 major categories. There's different subsections of serifs and stuff, but you don't really need to get into that. I'm just kind of going to briefly touch on the different types. You got old style. That works with the diagonal stress. That means that right here you're going to have the stress. Right here you're going to have the stress. When it starts coming out is right there. You see it in the S. There's the fat part. The fat part of the letter is going to come out. That's what they mean when they say stress, is it gets fat there. Now, modern, you have a vertical stress or a vertical fatness. So all of your vertical lines are going to be the fatter lines in the text. Now, in serif, this is a very kind of futuristic type. There's no stress on anything. There's no little pieces that come off. There's no little ornamentation, like your typeface is going to have little bits that come down here and little bits that spread out down there. This is just as basic, no stress as you can get. Script is any font that looks like it's been hand-drawn, hand-lettered. There's several kinds. And then decorative font is going to be a very distinctive style, something that you would probably use for a specific theme. If you're saying a cowboy theme, this would be perfect for it. So those are our categories of type. Things to consider when you're designing for your audience. Is there contrast in the elements? Are they getting enough of a difference from the background with your, let's say you have a gray background and you decide you're going to have a slightly darker gray font for your body of your text. Is there enough contrast there? Is it going to stand out? Are they going to be able to see it? Not only that, is there enough contrast in the elements as far as weight of the text, size of the text? Is the document aligned? Is it set up properly like this? Is there a reasonable map, a reasonable progression from one sentence to the next? Are the elements in text strategically placed to meet the parallel lines of the other elements? This is what we're talking about with the proximity lines. We can even pull that up right there. Does this box meet with that? Does this box meet with this? Proximity lines are wonderful things. Don't need a ruler anymore when you have proximity lines. Thank you, proximity. Does your document show repetition in heading and subheading elements, like these words right here? Boom, 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 boom. Those are all the same weight. They're the same size. They're the same font. We've got some repetition here. So I'm trying to use these design elements as examples to show you how we can improve our documents to more successfully deliver your message to the audience. That's the whole point of this specific week's lesson. Now moving on, we're going to kind of start thinking about our final project. We're going to talk about memes. Now if you'll remember, in week 1 you picked a quote. It was your favorite quote, and then you talked about that quote in your week 1 blog. Well, here we are in week 3, and we're going to talk about taking that quote and we're going to make a dang meme out of it. Now I realize that most memes are sarcastic or funny, but they can also be inspirational and sweet. A meme, for those of you that don't know, that have been living in a cave, is a digitally transmitted cultural symbol or social ideal. Most of modern memes are captioned photos that are intended to be funny, often as a way to publicly ridicule human behavior. They can be videos, they can be verbal expressions, but memes have heavier and more philosophical content at times. Most of the time, though, you got Kermit sipping tea. A meme typically consists of an intentionally relevant body of text superimposed over an image. Now this is what we are going to be doing for our final project. You are going to be going out into the streets, out into the parks, out into the wild, wild world, or onto the internet. I'd prefer it, since everybody has a smartphone nowadays, or the capacity to take a picture in some form, that you go and take a picture on your own, because heck, it's fun. Get out of the computer. You spend enough time on the computer as students anyway. Go think about your text, think about your quote, and try to find something that you think would help convey the rhetorical message of your quote. Then what we're going to do is I will show you next week in a PowerPoint video how to create a PowerPoint slide and save it and submit it, and it will be the image that you choose and the text that you choose, and we're going to put them on top of each other, and I'm going to show you some more of these little design tricks of PowerPoint to help increase the readability of your document. Title of your final project will be called Me, 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 just because I'm a very punny person. I like silly things. Things that you need to remember from this week: vocabulary and design concepts. We have contrast, we have alignment, we have repetition, proximity, typeface, and font. And with font, we need to talk about size, weight, form, structure, direction, color, etc. These are all in your reading for this week. I didn't feel the need to put them in here because they're not, this video is kind of dragging anyway, but this is in your reading, so you should know these by the end of the week. Size, weight, form, structure, direction, color. These all have to do with font. And you should be able to define meme for me. Here's some credits. And that's it for this week. Good luck on your blogs. Don't forget, get them in by Wednesday night. Comment on 4 by Friday. And check your email from me for any feedback. If you guys need to contact me, my information is available. And I am always ready to talk. Thanks.